Well, besides producing faster hardware, one of the major concerns about fifth-generation work is improving the way we communicate with computers. In fact, something as simple as voice communication in colloquial language is perhaps one of the most computer-intensive applications of all.
Stanford University is also one of the world's leading centres for research into robots. Stanford employs Dr. Stefan Michalowski to research into one of the worst problems left behind by the Vietnam War: how to give some freedom back to war veterans who've lost the use of their limbs.
If you want to pick up a flower, it's very easy for you and me to do. And we really have three things going for us. We have a very good manipulator, our arm, with lots of articulations and muscles. We have very good sensation in vision and touch. And most importantly of all, we have this fantastic computer, which is our brain, that allows us to coordinate all the sensations and all the movements. Now, if you want to do the same thing with a robot, then you really have your work cut out. And so what we've done is we've put together this manipulator, and its dexterity is provided by 6 joints, 6 degrees of freedom. They are controlled by a computer on board, and there is a certain amount of sensation in this hand, in this end effector here. Now, the key to success here, really, is to allow the user, the paralyzed user of this device, to look at the situation, to judge what kind of movements have to be executed, and then to tell the robot what the robot should do.
Placing the flower in one corner of a living room creates yet another set of difficulties. Stefan's solution involves a disabled person directing the robot from a computer console.
Define vehicle points.
Stefan can define a path on the computer which the robot will follow.
Mark point.
The computer is programmed by nothing more than movements of the head and spoken commands.
Mark point.
Sensors on either side of the screen detect the position of Stefan's head.
Mark point.
He then uses his head movements to position points on the screen.
Mark point. Finished.
The points are then joined into a path for the robot to follow.
Define vehicle path.
The computer interrogates him as he does this.
Which trajectory is being defined?
1.
Next point.
No more points. Do vehicle path.
Which path?
1.
After the robot has been told to cross the room, the computer monitors its progress on the screen. The robot has 3 special roller wheels, which are arranged at 60 degrees to each other and so allow the robot to move in any direction. The tricky bit occurs when the robot arrives at the flower. Stefan is now guided by a television camera which looks down the robot's arm.
Upward. Upward. Forward.
This allows him to maneuver the robot's hand into a position where it can grasp the flower.
Close hand. Upward. 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 Forward. Vehicle mode. Backward.
So, after many words have been exchanged between Stefan and the computer, the robot can finally carry the flower across the room. Stefan admits that there is still much work to be done in robotics to imitate the ease with which the human brain can command the human body's movements.
The biggest problem is that commanding a device, or a human for that matter, to execute simple motions on command, which is the way our system works right now, is a fundamentally unnatural way of doing manipulation. When an able-bodied person does manipulation, they do it basically unconsciously. And to have to concentrate and think about each movement in particular, forward, backward, the way the robot works now, it's unnatural, it's frustrating, it takes a long time, and eventually people get discouraged.
Well, it's easy to have a simple programming language and just have single words, do this, do that. But of course, a person having a robot help with a meal, to get in bed, or any of the many things that a person might want a robot to do, wants to speak in a very natural way. And to assume the robot has a background and can follow instructions the way a person does. And it's a very complicated problem to move from the very precise language of programming to the robot understanding and being able to carry out instructions spoken in English. Well, there's nothing so subtle and marvelous as the human vision system or the human auditory system. Just take the vision system. There certainly is not going to be built into a robot in the same amount of space, let us say, the capabilities of the human vision system in any near future. So we must deal with something very much more limited. And it'll be limited for quite some time. Now, it isn't just the vision system in terms of talking about the eye and how the eye works. It's also the way the information that comes into the eye is cognitively organized in the brain. I mean, that's a very complicated and intricate affair. And how's a robot going to do all that?
Well, that Stanford robot had a video camera on its arm, but the picture was for the benefit of the operator, not the robot. Humans are particularly good at interpreting visual images. Have a look at these. Now, you'll probably recognize most of these faces, and that's despite the fact that you're seeing each picture for only about a second. But getting a machine to recognize something as complex as a face is a major challenge. Now, each of these video images contain over half a megabyte of information. And they were, of course, all the post-war British Prime Ministers. But the same face can look quite different. And we humans have no difficulty in knowing that this is the same person. But could a machine do the same thing?
But here is a machine from Brunel University that does recognise faces. It's called Wizard, and it's a pattern recogniser aimed mainly at industrial applications, like looking for faulty items on production lines. And it could be useful for something like security systems, as it can also recognise faces if it's taught them first. And I'm going to teach them my face. Leslie, would you like to operate it?
I'm going to teach them your face.
Oh, you're going to do it?
OK, are you sort of in position?
Yes, I am, and I can move my face around. Smile.
Right. Yes, keep your chin on the block, so to speak, Mac, but make all the usual silly expressions that you do. That's it.
Thank you.
The machine wants a fair old
It's
challenge.
got to be able to recognise me in any
Yeah,
particular
that's
configuration
right.
of this ugly face.
That's right. I mean, the more information you give it by doing that, if you look up here on this bar graph, you can see Mac is actually going in there on line 4. That's the bottom line. And this indicator, which is zooming up 70%, 80%, 90%, shows the amount of information that Wizard is gathering about Mac's face, which will enable it to recognise it when it sees it again. It is 90% sure it's you, Mac, so you can now move.
Thank you. I'm sure it's me too. Well, we programmed some of the MicroLive team this afternoon, including Fred. Well, come on, Fred,
Right,
let's see if we
my
can
moment
separate
of
you
glory.
from all the other beauties
Right.
in MicroLive.
10 to 1, it says Robert Redford.
Oh, what?
Here we go. How's that?
Look at that picture. What a treat. Now, now listen, Fred, you're never
I
going to
can
get a
make
new
faces.
job with a face like that,
What?
you know. My goodness. But if we have a look over at the bar graph, Fred now is represented by number 3, and that's the indicator that's shooting way out to 90%. So in recognition mode, Wizard is very sure that that is Fred and no one else.
Let's see if we can fool it. Try
Right,
with me with a pair
okay,
of glasses
okay.
on.
Now, what's happening? What's happening? You've
How
confused
do I-
it
How do I
completely.
get to look like Mac?
Oh, it's not at all sure. What have you done? You've put Mac's glasses on, but no. Fred, you can't fool it. It's still absolutely sure it's you.
Ah.
Anywhere between 70 and 80% sure.
Right. Facial discrimination, I call it. There you go, Mac.
Thank you.
It's great. A presenter's lot, I think, actually, standing in front of a camera, hoping somebody's going to recognise you. So, how does it actually work? Well, it certainly doesn't learn all the pictures coming from the camera. The learning process takes a good 20 seconds, and in that time, the video camera sends about 500 separate pictures. What it actually learns is patterns, and there are no transputers or exotic parallel processing devices involved, because, have a look at this. This is one of Wizard's memory boards, and as you can see, there are standard memory chips, but they're chips that are used in a very novel way. The picture from the camera is simplified into black and white, so each of the 50,000 pixels that make it up are either on or off. The system then divides the image into groups of 5 pixels scattered across the screen. Now, 5 pixels can form 32 different combinations, depending whether they're individually on or off. And each combination corresponds to one position or address in the small chunk of memory that you can see represented at the bottom of the screen. As Wizard takes different snapshots of Mac, it builds up a pattern in the memory block which represents his face as seen by these 5 pixels. But obviously 5 pixels are not enough to cope with the whole picture. There are 10,000 of these small memory blocks, each directly linked to a group of 5 pixels, and all learning in parallel and building up a unique impression of Mac. And all this using standard memory chips. You see, it's no coincidence that Wizard can discriminate between 8 faces at a time, and there are 8 blocks or 8 bands of chips on this board, and to each band there are 8 separate chips. So when a face comes along, the current image is compared with those in memory, and the nearest one wins. So, although Wizard might look as though it knows about eyes and noses and the shapes of mouths, it of course doesn't. It's just a machine for recognising patterns in the images it's being sent. And to do this, it uses a network of memory, which is more like the way that our own brains work. In fact, one of the people who developed Wizard, Professor Igor Alexander, reckons that eventually it should be possible to produce something equivalent to a human brain. And at the present rate of progress, he estimates that it'll take about 1 million years.
As soon as that? Well, Wizard comes from Brunel University and it has minimal funding for another 2 years. During that time, it's hoped to exploit its full commercial potential. Well, that may be difficult. There are plenty of examples where the originators of brilliant new ideas have failed to profit from their own creations.